everybody. Welcome to Queued Up. With me, the one and only Eli Ninja Hensley, the one and only Michael Tumbleweed Kepley, and the one and only Davis Tadlock. And I'm CJ, aka the Pathfinder. Thanks for joining us here today for Queued Up. We're talking lots of amazing esports topics on this day of days. We're gonna visit the ALGS and talk a little bit of Apex Legends. We're gonna talk some Valorant, VCT, who do we see is going through that side. Then we're gonna visit Counter-Strike on the Blast Open for spring right now. And then we may dabble in some Halo stuff, and then we'll see where the day takes us. We might just jump into some random news as it pops right in front of us. So I'm gonna start with Davis, because I like to pick somebody first. Davis, what's the most exciting thing you've watched recently, just for the viewers at home?
In my opinion, I think it's been the recent Blast tournament, or possibly ESL, but CS2 has been full swing, and I've really enjoyed all of it.
I do think we have all caught the Counter-Strike bug in different ways, right? Like all of us are kind of really into the Counter-Strike stuff. But first, let's jump into Apex Legends. Eli, do you want us to open this up for us and talk a little bit of Apex to introduce it to the audience?
Sure, yeah. So Apex, one of my personal favorite games. Maybe disagreed with on some of the other members of this council, but a fun esport to play and watch. So they just announced year 5 of the ALGS. They announced that there's going to be 3 major lands. First one coming up in New Orleans is going to have 160 teams. So that's 480 players. I do not envy the people that are setting up that land. That's going to be a nightmare. But it's going to be really fun to watch. Double elimination structure. So you'll have a winner's bracket and a lower bracket. And they're switching up the meta as well. So it's going to be exciting.
Yeah. And when it comes to Apex lands, I think they're just different, right? We see a lot of games where it's 2 teams, right? One team against another team, and that's kind of your main stage. You have a lot of matches there. But ultimately, Apex is so different in the fact that there are all these different teams and all these different players on a bigger map playing simultaneously. So you end up with all kinds of different, like, did we get everybody in the lobby? So, like, did one PC out of the 160 that are there drop off? And did that create issues? Kepley, tell me, do you think that's awesome? Do you think that's lame? Tell me what your thoughts are on that stuff.
I don't like BRs as esports, and I imagine from just the little bit of LAN events that I've helped be in that 160 PCs would be a nightmare. So I don't even have to do it to know that I would hate it from like a networking perspective. But kudos to those guys that do it. Obviously it's got a market. It's a good league, right? People watch it like Eli and no one else.
That's crazy.
But no, I think, jokes aside, I am excited for those players. It's nice because it does get to showcase so many people, right? And that's kind of one of the problems, right, with real sports, esports, is it gets down to such a narrow percent. At least in Apex, you have a broader range to hit and get showcased.
Davis, what you got? What do you think?
That's a very interesting point. I hadn't thought about that, just how many people do get to compete with that format. All I know is I just wouldn't like to be the organizer of all those teams and trying to figure out the logistics.
Yeah, absolutely. Eli?
Yeah, it's going to be cool. What's got me the most excited, though, is the meta shift. So, we just finished the last competitive split, was extremely defensive. Every single team, literally 100% pick rate. For Gibraltar and Newcastle, the 2 defensive gods in the game. But now they've buffed the crap out of the assault champions so that teams are going to be more likely to push each other and be more willing to push. But on top of that, they added this legend ban system. So at the very beginning of the game, everybody can pick whatever champion they want. After game 1, the champion that was picked by the most teams is no longer available for play for the rest of the series. So by the end of it, I expect we're going to see a lot of champions that may have never even been seen in competitive play, like Mirage, and we might see a resurgence of Revenant and some of these champions that we haven't seen a lot of.
It's definitely a shift in the way games are played and thought about, and roster creation happens for these games because you really want to find somebody with kind of this deeper player pool. Like we've been talking about in the Fearless Draft for League of Legends, it's like I'm now looking for players that cannot just play Ashe. They cannot just play one character. They have to be able to have some depth to who they're playing. Davis, give me your thoughts on what that meta is going to look like.
I love this because one of the things about being a professional gamer, in my opinion, is being able to have that deep bag and those different mechanics that makes you a professional. I don't want to see you sit on one agent and just perfect it. If you're a professional, I want you to see you bounce around, maybe stay within the same, if you're a defensive player, you play that, or if you're an assault player, you play that. But play a few different agents and show me what you can do with some different mechanics on different people.
Yeah. Cap, what you got?
I mean, I think diversity is good, right?
He's like, I just hate BRs.
yeah. I mean, like
This one happens to be good.
it's a lot of RNG, right, when it comes to BRs. So I think that there's a lot of factors to go into that. So it's nice to have that different pool, but at the end of the day, you're gonna have a play style, and in my opinion, a lot of Apex comes down to hitting shots, right, cracking shields, being able to swarm those teams, play the edge of the map. So yeah, are there gonna be some good things about playing multiple agents? Sure, but at the end of the day, like the game is the game itself, and so those are going to be very nuanced unless you're having to push through like a Gibraltar shield or you're repositioning with Valkyrie, right? You want someone who's going to hit those shots and can take fights at range and win and crack an end of fight quick, so you don't get third partied.
Well, so from my understanding, the meta has shifted pretty dramatically over the last couple seasons for Apex. But Eli, just talk to us a little bit about the current meta in the game and if it's a little bit faster, a little bit slower, and what it looks like.
It's definitely a lot faster, and maybe I'm biased because my favorite champion is Ashe. That's who I play if I'm playing Apex. She used to be the lowest pick rate of every single champion, but then they gave her an extra dash. So you can just jump again while in midair, and she has a pretty impressive dash forward. So now she's like the fastest champion in the game, which get top level play in every esports, all about movement, right? So all these teams are now picking Ashe. She's also got the snare to slow people down, and she can reposition her entire team with her portal, which is especially useful on maps like E District, which is going to be one of the primary maps we see throughout this year. So she's gotten really strong. We've also seen Loba come into play quite a bit, which kind of pairs well with the Ashe. If you're going to be teleporting from one building to the next, you can place the Loba black market in each building and have a new radius of loot that you can just pull from in her black market. And then I think a lot of the staples are still going to be there. You're going to see Bangalore, who's always been meta since day one. She's just a very good champion with the smokes, and the double time and her ultimate just covers so much space. But the thing is, it's like after these champions get used in game one, how many teams will have used a Loba and an Ashe? And then which one is going to be off the table for the next game? So like we talked about, every player is going to have a deep champion pool.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see that a lot in how they practice and what they kind of use, because obviously they're going to have that first game where you're kind of ripping and roaring, and based off of those new characters, maybe the game slows down a little bit because you don't have that Ashe, you don't have those other characters that are going to slow that game down a little bit.
I don't think you want that.
Not anymore.
Well, I'll also say we're going to introduce the fact that there are 4 maps in the map pool that are currently going to be in there. It's going to be Storm Point, E District, Broken Moon, and a fan favorite, World's Edge. And those will be rotated through every 2 games or 3 games, depending on the series and whatever the TO or the developer decides on that one. But you're getting a plethora of maps. It's not the same game every time, because I would imagine there's a little bit of each map has its own little meta that's played on those maps. Eli, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit on each of those maps and where they look like and what it look, who likes what and those things.
Yeah, some of the maps are really tough for certain champions. Like Caustic doesn't like wide open space because his whole kit is about putting a toxic barrel in a small room and making you run into it. So he doesn't do as well on maps like Broken Moon, but I really do like this map pool because it's highly variant. There's a lot of different ways to play on each of these maps, and it's going to play into the pick ban meta as well. It's like you want to save maybe the more defensive champions for maps like World's Edge because the end zones are more defensive. And then maybe, make sure that you've got some of the wide open space champions like Loba on the bigger maps that have a lot more space between POIs. So it's a good mix of maps, and I think will be interesting to see how these teams choose legends based on the maps.
Kepley, what do you think it would take to convince you to be a fan of BRs? What would have to happen in that world for you?
I mean, fortunately, right, as hard as I am on it, Apex is probably one of the better BRs to watch because of that, change up in maps, because there's so many different heroes that you play. Like something like Fortnite was really boring, because the build meta is play the edge, build a fortress, and hold it down. Apex does have a lot more action packed, so it is a little higher paced. Typically, of course, the method, Gibraltar, checkmate, right? That is slower, but it's got a lot of diversity, right? So there's a lot of things to bring you in. Call of Duty, no, get out of here.
No Warzone, no Warzone, huh?
Yeah, I would immediately become one of the biggest advocates for BRs. Halo, give me the BR.
Yeah, Halo has the perfect sandbox, man. Where is the Halo BR?
Where is the Halo BR? Well, we're going to be watching a lot of the Apex Legends action, especially as it comes to this LAN. It's going to be in New Orleans. New Orleans is an awesome city to go visit. If you've never been there, go check it out. But definitely worthwhile. We'll be watching, we'll be reviewing, we'll be seeing what's going to happen with the meta, and we're excited to see that game as it unfolds. But switching gears, we're going to go VCT action, the greatest shooter that was ever made. I don't know if that's true. If you think it's true, let us know down there. But Valorant, VCT, specifically we're going to focus on Americas this one. The group stages are starting. I want to look at the actual groups and I want to introduce these teams. We've seen some of them, like the powerhouse teams such as Sentinels and G2, who made it to the Bangkok Masters tournament. That G2 obviously went to the finals, lost in the finals, but there's some powerhouse teams that are in here as well. You get a lot of the Brazilian teams as well. You got MIBR on this side, some Furia. Cloud9's there, not to be messed with, 100 Thieves, Evil Geniuses. So you have these two pools of teams, but if you were to take your top, I don't want to do top two because I think everyone's going to pick G2 and Sentinels, but ultimately, like, give me your, maybe the two that are under there that you'd like to kind of see perform, or just an overview of the teams. I'll start with you, Kep.
I think Sentinels is my first one, right?
Yeah.
It's the safe pick, and it's the team that I'm most familiar with Valorant, which, guys, I'm not. I'm still learning it, right? I'm coming into it, but Sentinels is a good one. After that, I'll go a different pick. I'll go with 100 Thieves.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's just it's a team name I'm familiar with. So those will be the two teams that I start kind of watching in Valorant, starting to branch out from there as I start to see different teams and their play styles. But Sentinels, there's a lot of history there. I just wish that when it came to an international competition, they wouldn't choke it up and they would win. So.
Yeah, and I kind of rushed into this, so I'll come back to it quickly. The group stage, how it works is there are 6 teams in each group, and there's 2 groups. And so Group Alpha is Sentinels, Crew Esports, Loud, Evil Geniuses, 100 Thieves, and 2 Game Esports. And then your Group B, which is actually Group Omega, not Group B. No Bravo on this side. They go Group Omega. But G2, MIBR, Leviathan, NRG, Fura, and Cloud9. I think I would go like Cloud9 and 100 Thieves is like, those are the 2 big names that are both on each side of that.
Yeah.
Isn't Sentinels and G2.
Yeah, NRG's up there too.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of these teams that essentially could come out and show. Eli, what are you looking for within this group as we jump into maybe the first match, which is going to be NRG versus Cloud9?
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
For these 2 teams. Like NRG is trying to prove that they belong in the number 2 spot right now, right behind G2. And I kind of believe that they are there. I think that Cloud9 is more in that phase where they've got something to prove. I'm a big Cloud9 fan, have been since they were originally in esports at all. So I'm kind of rooting for them, but I expect NRG to take that one.
Yeah. Last season, Cloud9 faced up against G2 in the playoffs, did fall to them, and then they fell to MIBR right after that, right? And so those will be matchups that we definitely look for. NRG kind of had a same story, right? They went to the lowers really quickly in the playoffs last semester, weren't able to really become much of it. But interesting matchup. I think they are close based off of their results from playoffs last season, but we'll see if they've actually been working anything out the offseason. Davis, just your initial thoughts on some of these groups and these teams.
Yeah, G2 is definitely my favorite for the Group O. Another team that I'm looking at, though, is Leviathan. So I'm actually a really big Demon 1 supporter. I've been following him since he popped off in 2023. So I'm hoping that he can bounce back and, cement his name and hopefully help this Leviathan team find some success.
Yeah. The matches coming up for next week, like I said, C9 versus NRG is going to be the first. Crew versus Loud, G2 versus Fura, MIBR versus Leviathan, and 2 Game versus EG. None of the powerhouses really hitting each other first. Maybe the Loud versus Crew, I'm not sure. But I think those 2 teams did well last playoff. But we'll see if those kind of are able to be something that, is a close match, right? You never know how these series are going to fall. But Kepley, any of those matches seem interesting to you?
Like I said, I'm still learning. So for right now, honestly, I mean, it's kind of like the safe answer, but a lot of them are exciting to me, right? Because I want to get in and kind of get my feet wet a little bit more with Valorant, same way as I did with Counter-Strike here recently. I didn't go into Counter-Strike thinking, I'm going to become a fan of the Mongols, right? But I may leave here and become a fan of MIBR or something like that. Just their play style might resonate with me. So that's kind of what I'm going in.
Yep.
And it's nice to go in a little blind to something like this with so much team diversity.
Absolutely. It lets you be able, if you've never seen it before, you can look at it and be like, hey, who do I really like? Who do I like watching play? Eli, when you look at those matchups, what do you think? What's a banger one for you?
I just want to watch Sentinels, to be honest. I want to see how they do, man. I was a big Tens fan. We all miss Tens. Tens come back. We need you. But I don't know. I think it'll be cool to see if they pick up the pieces. A lot of people clowned on them for a top 8 finish in the last major, but the thing is, like, they didn't look that bad. They took G2 to the distance. G2 is known as this powerhouse. Like, if they had a different bracket, I think we would have seen a different placement for Sentinels. So I'm excited to see them and see how they bounce back. They've been very public in saying that they did not meet their own expectations, and I want to see them back up those words. Let's see what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, obviously, we're just introducing these matches and some of these teams for this one, but we definitely want to talk about them a little bit more next week. But if you're excited about VCT, we'd love to hear who your favorite team is, who maybe a star player is that you're looking at, that you want to see more of, that we can talk at and discuss on the show. But any closing comments on the VCT before we switch gears to some Counter-Strike?
Yeah, one thing I want to talk about actually is the NRG versus C9 matchup. I think it's going to be really close. I think these teams are in a very similar position. They're both 1 and 2 so far this year. And actually, C9 has already beat NRG one time, 2-0 in this year. So I think, you could see NRG potentially coming back to get a win there against them. It'll be interesting. I think they're very similar.
I'm with you, Davis. I think that's the match to watch for me, just the NRG versus C9. It seems like it's going to be the closest one on paper versus first couple weeks. But obviously, what's great about the offseason is that people have gotten better. It might be the same player, but it might not be the same player, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think those are things to look for. Okay, cool. Well, Counter-Strike going on right now. Blast, the Open Spring event that we have. We just came off the ESL event. There's so many things that are constantly going on in Counter-Strike. But I want to look at these groups for Counter-Strike. It looks like there's 2 groups. Group A, which is Team Spirit, the Huns Esports, Falcons, Mouse, Faze, Virtus Pro, Australis, and Vitality. Now that's Group A. Group B is G2 Esports, Imperial Esports, Team Liquid, Eternal Fire, NAVI, Furia, M80, and the Mongols. So if I were to stack up these groups together, Davis, which one do you think is maybe a tougher group or has more of the powerhouse teams inside of it?
Yeah, so I think the Group A definitely has more of the powerhouse teams in it. I mean, the top 3 power ranked teams are all in Group A. But I think when you look a little bit closer, it's not as lopsided as it seems. I mean, teams 4 through 7, all those are actually in Group B. So even though that you do have the heavy hitters 1 through 3 all in the same group in Group A, also there are some good teams and some teams around the same level that are all they're in Group B. So even though you have the top 3, you maybe have some weaker teams that they're going to be facing off against in Group A.
Do you agree with that, Kep?
I do, from a little bit of bias. I mean, Mongols, they were able to take a game off Vitality, right? Spirit did look really weak in that, towards the end there. But, Donk showed up here. So I think that someone like Mongols could take that. I mean, M80 versus Mongols was going on as we came in here to record, and M80 is looking really close to Mongols, right? Yeah. So if we draw an assumption from there, that means they should be able to hang with the likes of Spirit and Vitality. And then, you can't ever sleep on Eternal Fire, G2, right, from that group. So I think there's heavy hitters in both, but I mean, if you obviously base it off recent results, it's Spirit and Vitality just make Group A seem so much more stacked.
Yeah, and today Eternal Fire slammed up against Liquid, and Eternal Fire looked really good there. Yeah. Liquid looked really bad, but Eternal Fire is like one of those sleeper teams that's like super explosive at times. So it's like that's kind of a sleeper team in Group B that's like I expect them to make it out, and you don't know. Like I actually trust them to at least take off maybe a map or 2 from Vitality or Spirit if they got stacked up against them.
Yeah, and I was just double checking. I can't even believe I didn't even talk about NAVI, right? Like I know Mongols beat NAVI, but NAVI is that's normally in your top 3 conversation right there. So so NAVI's a big heavy hitter too. It's just going to be who shows up on those days, but it's all moot, right? Because Mongols going to win it all. So.
There you go, Eli. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're both good groups. It looks like Group A is maybe a little bit stronger, but not insanely so. You guys didn't even mention Team Falcons, who were in the grand finals against Mouse 2 tournaments ago. Of course, Mouse made grand finals twice in a row. Win one, lose one. Different competition in the finals each time. But we're seeing Faze back in the mix as well, and they're also in Group A. A lot of people were like, well, if Faze was there, things would be different at the last tournament. So they're there, and let's talk about that. Virtus Pro. First of all, Faze win game 1. It's very close. I want to say 16-12 in rounds. Next one, barely won by Virtus Pro. And then the last game, Dust 2, Virtus Pro 13-0 Faze, which nobody expected that.
No, it's like at this level, I think it's really hard to say, hey, we're not going to take one round. I think there were some close rounds in that one, but Normally when you see a game 3 too, you see a lot of momentum on both sides that they come in and swing into that match. And, Faze just did not look good on Dust 2 at all. Davis, what do you think?
I think it's insane. I mean, to not win a single round and you're a professional team to the likes of Faze, I mean, that's actually really crazy. But it also, I think we need to talk about the fact that they were 13-0'd and the fact of, the team played so well against them that they were able to win so many rounds.
Yeah, it's wild. And they're all T-side wins, by the way, too.
Yeah.
And so, we talked about this many times on the show. I say many times, but the last couple of times,
Right.
it's like the T-side is definitely stronger. And so, VP showed up, won their 12 terrorist rounds, and then took the counter-terrorist pistol away, and it was over. And it's it's one of those things where, did they just have a bad flow state? What happened? Is the mental just shocked? What do you think, Kepley?
I mean, I always hear this insight, right? Because again, right? I mean, for the folks who've been watching, I'm new to Counter-Strike, right? The same way I'm going to be learning Valorant. So I keep hearing the stories of Faze and Kerrigan being this huge shot caller. And at the end of the day, it seems like if your team crumbles like that in 13-0, then Kerrigan was probably, I'm assuming, right? He was feeling out of place and he wasn't able to put a good strategy together against what VP brought. So, for me, kind of blind, I knock Faze, but maybe I should be hyping up Virtus Pro, right? Maybe that showcases Virtus Pro, how prepped they were to come into Dust 2, which is a long-time staple of this game. So both teams have so many reps on it. The strat's it's going to be who shows up there.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other highlights from any of the matches that you guys seen so far? Obviously, that was a good one. Mongols going on right now. It looks like they're up 1-0. We kind of fighting through there. I'm hoping we see... I really don't want to watch Vitality versus Mouse again on the Group A side. I think that one might be a little bit of a... I've seen this once before. I know what's going to happen here. I'd maybe take Spirit over Mouse just for the viewer experience, just to see how they kind of stack up because I haven't seen them play each other recently. So, but anything else from the group on any of the matches?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it looked like Virtus Pro did their homework. I think they knew they were going to play Faze and studied them and then just came in with some strats that they didn't expect. They were also super clutch. I mean, it's not like every round was like they still had 3 or 4 people alive. Like there was multiple rounds that they 1v3'd, 1v2'd, 1v4'd. So I don't know. Virtus Pro is looking like they're kind of on an upswing, but they might meet the brick wall that is Team Vitality. So far, no one's really been able to touch them recently. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that upper bracket final in that group. But on the other side, I'll probably call Mongols versus Navi. Probably.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, that can't happen. Probably Eternal Fire versus Mongols, right?
I mean, the matchup could happen, but if you're looking at a finals, yeah, I'd love to see Mongols go against probably G2, right? If I had to pick one.
Sure.
But Eternal Fire is really nice. I'm cheering for the Mongols so heavy right now. On the other side, I mean, I'm kind of getting what I want early, right? After seeing that Virtus Pro Faze game, to see Virtus Pro now good to go against Vitality. I think Vitality is the bar. And everyone wants to see Vitality go against Spirit because we just like watching Donk play. But it'll be nice to see if Spirit can recover because they looked really good against the Huns.
They did. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Lots of matches that'll happen. We'll talk about them on Monday for sure to cap off some of the matches. But I do want to hit on this something I noticed because we jumped right from ESL to Blast. And I had recognized this, but the UI differences are wild. They're just crazy different. Davis, tell me a little about your experience with ESL and then switching over to Blast at this point.
Yeah, so I think the main difference for me between the two is I feel like Blast is a lot more friendly to your casual viewer. I think ESL is a lot more formed to people that are experienced with CSGO, know what they're looking at because there's so much stuff that's on, both sides, the mini-map and everything. Blast keeps everything to the bottom and kind of keeps the gameplay at the center focus. And so that's my main distinction between the two. I think Blast is a lot more casual friendly.
Eli, top left, mini map, faces on the map. Are we a fan of faces or no faces and why?
I'm not a fan. I don't want to see their doofy faces moving around the map. Like if I was a player, I wouldn't want my doofy face projected on this map. Like just put a little number there. The way ESL did it was beautiful. All you got to do is check to see what number they are. Okay, then you can kind of, as long as they're color coded, I don't think it's even that important to distinguish them. It's like you can kind of see the general formation of the team. Yeah, maybe if someone's your favorite player, you can like specifically hone in on them. But I don't know. I don't like the faces. I think it's a little bit weird, personally.
Kepley, faces, no faces.
I'm really indifferent to that. What I liked the most about ESL was when they were lining up smokes and stuff, you would see like the little grenade icon come and then you would see like an arrow indicator of where they were trying to throw it. I didn't see that in the Blast UI, so that was ESL specific. I really liked that from a viewer because even though he's standing there looking at a wall, I was like, what, been blasting me. What is this guy doing? What's his doofy face doing?
Yeah.
Right. But in ESL, I kind of know he's prepping a nade, and then you see the nade go, and then you see the little smoke icon. So that's really informative. Whether it's a face or not, I mean, I don't really care. Like, as a viewer, I don't want to have to search around the screen to find info. So like, who's 6? He's over here, right? So seeing the face is okay, but if you're new to the esport, you don't know their doofy face anyway.
You still have to match face to the player.
So I don't know. I just want to go against Eli.
Yeah, my biggest complaint was the same thing Eli said. I think the faces were a little bit silly. I think the main thing people were looking at the mini-map for is to figure out, who's in this position, which player is in that position. And it's kind of hard whenever you're trying to say, okay, is this face matching with this face? Just give me the number.
Yeah.
They all look the same too, don't they?
Yeah, when it's a small headshot, it's actually really hard to distinguish sometimes.
It is,
I mean, imagine watching it on mobile. Like, it's literally just, how are you going to have any idea who it is?
Well, and I was doing the exact same thing you were, Kep, where like I couldn't figure out, I was trying to figure out numbers last week. Where like number 1 is who? And so then I'd be like, oh, number 1 is Donk. Like, he should win that gunfight, right? So you kind of like, once you correlate player to spot, then you can kind of convert it to like your prediction of the play. And I think that's interesting because when I'm doing that with Blast, I actually just don't find myself doing it as much. Like in ESL, when I was watching it, I was, but in Blast, I do not.
Yeah, watching the Blast games, I find myself just being like, get rid of the minimap.
Yeah,
I don't need it.
Sure.
Right? Just you have the spectator see the minimap so they can take me to the action, but I'll just take the viewership experience.
Yeah, I think that's something that's definitely notable. The other thing that's notable on specifically the Blast UI is the fact that the numbers of the damage show up at the bottom of the screen, which makes it very obvious when the damage happens. I find that very visually appealing.
I like that too. I also noticed that.
Yeah, it just makes it easier to follow the round. And the flashes and the same. It's crazy how it's just all connected with Counter-Strike, and that's like the only game where it's like the player cams is all connected to everything that happens inside the game, the smokes, the flashbangs, all those things. So that's one of the reasons that I love watching Counter-Strike. So here we are. Okay, the other thing I wanted to bring up that I was looking at recently, the schedule for Counter-Strike. Pretty intense. I actually just threw it in our group chat, but there's probably, let me count them real quick. Maybe there's got to be 19 other events this year, and they're all in different countries, different locations around the world. Some in Asia, some in Europe, some in America. So when you look at this, and Eli, I'm going to come to you first. From a player perspective, is that cool? Is it like, yo, like I'm traveling around the world, I'm getting to play all these events? Or is it like, yo, I just want to be at home? Like, where's that balance, you think, for the players?
It's exhausting, and as a player, you're going to burn out if you're playing in every single one. I think what a lot of these teams have done, though, I was just watching the Faze vlog, and they were talking about how they're just going to play 2 of the series and just ignore all the tournaments in the other. That's why we didn't see Faze at the last tournament. And now we see them here at this one is because that was just one of the ones they're going to skip. And I think that's smart because if you play every single one, you're going to burn out. I don't think you're going to play your best. There's something to be said for just having some rest and relaxation time to like kind of mentally process what you just endured. Like these guys literally just went to war for a week straight. Then they're on the road for 1 day and now they're back in war. It's like you didn't have any time to process what you did wrong and what you could have done better. And I think that's not healthy for players.
Well, it's really crazy you describe it as war because, like, I view it as the lean back versus lean forward activity. And, like, when you're playing a competitive esport, like, you're leaning forward. Your brain is very active on a lot of different things as it's going on. So, like, the amount of tournaments they play is pretty exhausting on top of the travel. Right. So it's just layers and layers of, like, is this really a great experience? I think the other side might be, I love traveling. This is great. We're at a new venue. We're at a new place. We're at a new hotel. And,
But you're very extroverted, right?
That's true.
And a lot of these players might be introverted.
That's right. That's a very good point. Davis, what do you think?
Another thing I want to mention, too, is we're talking about the matches, but what about the practice and the scrims? You got to factor that in, too. So, I mean, travel, scrims, the tournaments, I think it's a ton. Another thing that I've actually been thinking about, and it's kind of just a conspiracy I've been thinking, but, I mean, it kind of makes sense in my head, but if you look at the players that have really been bursting onto the scene in the last few years, how young they are, and I know, like, obviously, as, time goes on and as more players go, the younger do typically become better. But if you really look at it, I mean, these guys are 17 years old, 16 years old. They don't really have a whole lot of, what's the word I want to use?
Fatigue?
Yeah, like real world distractions, in my opinion. And so when you throw real world distractions in that adults have into this huge slam-packed schedule, I think it can create a lot of chaos in your head. And so when you have a kid that's 16 years old and all he's worrying about is being the best CS2 player, I think that's very beneficial when you compare it to a guy that's maybe like 26. He's got family members, he's got relationships, and all this stuff to take care of. I think that could play a role in it.
Yeah, it's tough when you have to go to the DMV and you got to play your Counter-Strike match in Copenhagen. What do I do with that? Kepley, what are your thoughts?
Some might consider the DMV your Counter-Strike match.
Yeah,
that's
that
your
is a
scrim.
Counter-Strike
That's your
match.
scrim right there. Where can you plant the bomb and get out?
Oh no!
So no,
Federal agency's watching this. He's just kidding, guys. In game.
yeah.
That's funny.
I think it just comes down to like what that team is going for, right?
Yeah.
So you can win a lot of money at these events, right? So the winner of Blast, they get $150,000, right? The team does, right? How that's dispersed between the players, that's going to come as part of your travel, your finances gained. And some people want that. Some people just want trophies, they want rings. So some orgs are going to be more driven to that. And I think there's a lot of value for Spirit or Vitality to go to all these because that's a lot of money, and they're normally going to be one of your top 2 winners. But unfortunately, if you're a lower level team like the Huns or your Mouse, right? Even because Mouse has 2 grand finals, but if you don't make it there, you get knocked early, right? Because they're a little inconsistent.
Yep.
That's when you start to have to make those more informed decisions. But I'm sure they're scrimming at the lands, right, against each other. So that's kind of in their schedule. These players have played on these maps for so long that what can you scrim at this point, right? Now at this point, it's just whiteboarding.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're going to go here. You're going to do this lineup. And it's math, right? Oh, this is how much money you should have per kill. So that's, I think, where a lot of that is freed up there in Counter-Strike. But let's be real, esports people, they're not getting honeys anyway, man. At least the league players don't. Right? That's what those COD boys get.
That's crazy.
Oh, that's funny.
Crazy
That's
comms.
funny. Well, let us know what you think down in the comments. I'm curious to see if you think the travel lifestyle of going to every Counter-Strike tournament would be something cool, or if you think that would get a little exhausting. I don't know. I think you could go either way. I think there's different periods of your life where you might enjoy one or the other, like Davis said. But it'd be interesting to see what the players think and what the coaches think, and then the TOs on the back end. Go ahead, Eli.
I guess just something to add to that thought, like behind Davis, is this isn't just a Counter-Strike thing. This is in a lot of different realms. I've noticed it in poker. Like the World Series of Poker is now jam-packing their schedule, and some of the older heads are complaining that I can't keep up with the young guys because they don't get tired like I do. Like I'm going to make bad decisions when I'm tired. And then in disc golf, the older guys are complaining, I can't break my arm every single weekend with this jam-packed schedule. And I think it's because of just this content system that we live in, right? I mean, you have to be constantly producing content. The league is making money off content. The orgs are making money off the content. And if people aren't watching what you're doing, then you're not making money off of it. So it's making it more difficult as an older individual in these, and does give the edge to some of the young guys, not just because of their general life schedules, but also their physical limitations and fatigue. So it's just very interesting right now.
I think that's a good point, where like the monster fueling the engine is like the sponsorships, and so you have more sponsorships, you need more events, you need to be able to place more products in front of customers so you can meet those quotas for whatever those deliverables are. So you end up with a lot more tournaments and stuff like that. So it might be a byproduct, the business engine behind it, in a lot of ways too. So yeah. Curious to see. We'll keep looking at this in different games, and we'll keep talking to players and figure out what we like, what we don't like. But closing off Counter-Strike, let's put a stamp on it. Who's got the last hammer on comments for Counter-Strike for the Blast event?
G2's going to win.
G2's going to win. Okay. Mongols all the way.
I know we got some Mongols fans.
They're not going to make it past Mongols.
I started to actually really enjoy watching Mongols too, but
Techno is crazy.
Dude, it's so good.
He needs 1 pixel of visibility, you're dead.
That's right. It's over.
Insane.
9-10's fun to watch too. It's really I like that whole Mongols roster, so I'm biased. But G2 is also a lot of fun to watch.
big Monacy fan, got to stick with them.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and the whole Mongols government get behind them. I want that system to win so it can inspire other maybe countries
Yeah, that is weird.
Yeah.
other people. Yeah.
Love that. Cool. Switching gears, we're going to talk a little bit of Halo, and I think we can dabble into COD stuff because we just watched the ring ceremony as well for Optic on that side. But some recent news in Halo. Eli knows it better than all of us, okay? But Lunchbox gets picked up as the coach for Optic Gaming. What do you think this transition is going to mean for them?
I think it's big, honestly. So Lunchbox has been Optic's coach since day one of Halo Infinite, up until about 4 months ago. After the last tournament, he decided he wanted to do something else with his life. So this new Formal creates this new God Squad, picks up Tusk, who was a pro player himself. He played for Cloud9 most often, and he's a fantastic player. probably will return to competitive play now that he got dropped. But it feels like after Shopify win 2 tournaments in a row, Formal just immediately calls Lunchbox. He's like, "Bro, we need you back. Like, we need to get organized and get on the same page," because he's been pretty open with the fact that they haven't even gone over strategies. He feels like they haven't even spent that much time going over things, and to have a very organized, disciplined coach like Lunchbox behind you that's probably got a binder full of strats and can just kind of walk them through, hey, this is how you should play every map. I think that's going to be a big thing for Optic.
Yeah, I mean, and we talked about this last week, but you know, the idea of what does a coach do in what game, and I think that that's really impactful because when we talk about players, like they're not necessarily bringing a playbook, right? They're not necessarily holding people accountable, and when you ask the team captain to do that stuff, that creates a lot of controversy within the roster, and so you want a coach to be able to do that, and it sounds like Lunchbox has that experience and has done that before with other rosters.
The thing about Lunchbox too is this guy's a world champion player in his own right in his time.
Yeah.
I mean, him and his twin brother Roy are some of the biggest legends in Halo history. So like, and then even during the time that Lunchbox was on these teams, he was often coaching the team and coming up with the strategy. So it's a very easy transition for him to become, in my eyes, the greatest Halo coach of all time as well. He's just, you can hear him in the comms. So Halo's a little bit different from other esports where the coach is on the stage with the players and can make calls. So because he's a championship world-class player himself, they're going to trust if he says, no, this isn't our push, back up, or go now, they are weak on this side. Or he'll say, one thing that really stuck out to me, there was a clip where on the old Optic roster, the new sniper is coming up. Typically Lucid always gets sniped because Lucids just go to a snipe. But he said, no, let Joey snipe, which is Trippy. And I think there was something in that moment. He's like, Trippy's on fire right now, and I think that if he can get a couple of headshots, his confidence is going to soar, and the whole team's just going to get better as a result. So to be able to have that like deeper level of awareness of team dynamics, that's something not many coaches can do.
Yeah, Davis, what do you think? Go ahead. Yeah,
I'm really glad that Eli started off because I was a little bit confused about the whole situation looking at it, because from my perspective, I thought that they would roll into this LAN with the roster that they'd been competing with and practicing with and trying to form their whole season with. It was kind of a quick switch in my opinion because I didn't know the history fully with Lunchbox and everything. But yeah, I just thought it was a little early in my opinion. I mean, Shopify has started the season, won the first 2 events, and they are ahead. But also when you look at it, they're the team that's been playing with each other the longest since the start of this new season. So it kind of makes sense to me. And I thought, you know, Optic is doing well. It's not like they're placing bad. So I thought the move was a little weird, but now that you've given me a little bit of a backstory, I understand it more.
What do you think about just the voice of in Halo for the coach? Do you like that kind of more involved? Do you think that the team captain should be more responsible for those comms?
I don't know. I'm kind of back and forth because it's in esports and it's not in esports. All the esports that I've competed in, it's not allowed. And I do like the fact that you have the IGL whose voice, he's the one that everybody's listening to. But I think, like you said earlier, it kind of could cause some conflict between the players. Like if I don't necessarily think that's the right play in the back of my head, even though I'm going to listen to it, there's still that thought in the back of my head that's like, I'm not trusting this. So if I have a coach that I am, you know, it's his job to do that, I think that makes it a lot easier and a lot less stressful between players.
Yeah, it's like if the coach has the respect to make the call to give Trippy the sniper rifle, then it's a little different than like Formal saying, hey, no, give me the sniper rifle kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's interesting because it's like, I'd love to see more of those kind of coaching moments in esports and as a whole. I think that's good for the scene. But it's like these moves, it's like one of that's not a person playing the game. So ultimately the person playing the game still has to win in order to be able to perform for that coach. So it changes depending on who shows up in that day. So
I do think it's really cool though. I think the addition to the coach behind the players is a really cool aspect.
Yeah, agreed. Cool. Kep, anything on Halo on this conversation?
Coaches should be on stage on, I think, any sport. I mean, I think their impact is huge. I really liked it with Counter-Strike forever now. It's good that Halo's adopting it. And I hope League puts it in there one day too. I'd love to see coaches be able to get more recognition for the work that they put in, and not just be viewed as like a scapegoat. You know, really, if a team starts underperforming, there's so many factors that go in there.
Love that. The other thing that we saw recently was the Optic ring ceremony for Call of Duty. Kenny was on the stage with the team, but not on the starting roster. So we got to see that shortly. One of the things that stood out to me really quickly was the ring boxes were very elaborate, right? And one of the things that they said is why they didn't do the ring ceremony early is because the rings weren't ready. Whether that's the box because the rings are actually spinning in the box, or the rings themselves because there's a million diamonds on them, right? But it's interesting because, I don't know, I'll actually go to one of you guys. What do you think of the timing of that ceremony within everything else after seeing it?
The timing is definitely awkward. I mean, I will say that me personally, I'm not a very materialistic person. So like I could care less about the trophy or whatever the item is that you get for winning. So, and I feel like a lot of the players might be similar, but nobody can take away the fact that Kenny and the rest of this team were the world champions in the last game. So it's like, they should deserve that recognition somewhere. Optic's a very big organization. They were going to have this ceremony at some point in time. It's just awkward timing because obviously they just dropped Kenny, but I think that the greater fans of Optic in general like still respect and love Kenny and like are happy that he was a part of it and thought that he brought a lot to the team when they were successful. It's just strange now that like now he's being blamed as the reason they're not successful in the new game, and he just got dropped from the team like 2 days ago. So it's awkward, but at the same time, like give the man his trophy. Like he did what he did, and he should be proud of it.
So when you graduate from high school or college, you get a diploma, but it's not normally the diploma. They mail it to you afterwards. So Kepley, what do you think about that? Could you just give them something else in the meantime, have the ceremony, and then it's timed well? Or is this the right play to wait to make sure you give the actual thing to them?
I don't agree with the take that this is the wrong time from a lot of people. I mean, at the end of the day, what's going to make esports great is Optic's hosting their LAN. So Optic being able to have this kind of niche thing that they can celebrate for their players there to have a ceremony. I think other teams wish they could do that, right? Like if you go to the Faze major, Faze is going to want to have a trophy ceremony there. They want to make their event unique to try to encourage players to go there. Same thing with Rocker, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't agree that it's ill-timed. Kenny, they're talking all the time behind the scenes. Kenny probably knew that he was getting dropped a day or two before we did, right? And so they knew the spring ceremony was there. Kenny, the whole thing with being in the green wall and being a part of Optic is once you're in it, your family, right? And that's the core value to Optic. So any fan that, you know, is like, oh, well, Kenny sucks, be gone, right? Like you're not a part of the green wall, in my opinion, right? And I would argue that someone like Hex would agree with that, right? They know that the value is family there. There's a lot of investment that goes into those players. So I don't know. I don't think it's ill-timed. Give the players what they've earned, like Eli said. And whether you're materialistic or not, everybody loves a wall of trophies, right? If you've been a champion.
I'm kind of on the same page. I'm confused as to why it's such a big deal. Like, obviously, they're in a very bad position right now. They haven't been playing well. But it's their home major. So why would you not, if you won the grand final last year, why would you not have the ring ceremony at your major? I feel like that's the best opportunity to have it. You know, you're in your home state. You have all your home fans. It makes a lot of sense to me. Obviously, they're not playing well, and it's awkward because they just dropped a player that was on that roster. But, I mean, like you said, he's still family. He's still a part of that team. So if we're going to acknowledge it, this is the best time with all our fans and in our home.
Yeah, and I feel like with a lot of fan bases, like if Optic was dominating this whole season, if they were 13-0 or whatever, and they were doing the ring ceremony, the narrative would be, God, Optic's so arrogant. Why are they having a ring ceremony at their own event?
I 100%
right?
agree.
So I just think haters are going to hate, man. And like all the analysts, like I loved it. I'm not going to name drop, but I saw analysts on Twitter who were talking about how bad Kenny was and he should be dropped. Those same people, the moment Kenny's dropped, why'd you drop Kenny? It's bad timing. It's too soon. There's never a good time to drop a player. Like that just sucks if you're a player, right? So rip the Band-Aid off, reset. Hopefully Skies comes in and, you know, they've never placed below second at their home event. It does look like this will be the first time that happens. But maybe Skies comes in and they just click, you know, and they pop off.
Well, the Optic Major will be on this weekend. Today is Thursday, and so they'll have some matches today and all the way to Championship Sunday. So we'll see who reigns supreme. We made predictions on our last episode. Go check those out. Do you agree? Do not agree? I think Eli took 100 Thieves because they were the best.
I mean, yeah. I'm a stats guy. If I'm going to put money on it, I'm going to pick the best.
There you go. That's a good point. Okay, cool. Switching gears, Kep, can you introduce this one? We're going to talk a little bit of League of Legends.
Okay.
Los Ratones versus EWI. Give me the intro to this match, if you can.
I don't think that you need the intro to the match. I think the more important story there is Los Ratones.
Okay.
Right? That's the only reason we're talking about it. So they are... I don't know the right term. I always say challenger. It's just stuck with me because that's what we used to call it in league, is like that second level. So they're kind of a European challenger team, fully focused around content. So Cadril, who's the team owner, he identified this kind of gap in the market where, you know, a lot of people, viewership was dropping because everyone just streams solo queue, right? You go in there solo queue, you have this negative experience. And we don't really get streams of scrims anymore like we used to back in the day. That's why orgs like TSM became one of the biggest orgs in the world, because they streamed everything. So Cadril said, here's a gap in the market. I want to bring it back. So we started having conversations with, the LEC officials and all that, right, to set that in motion. A little foreshadowing for stream scrims getting blocked for a later topic. But this all led to getting, who can I get that's good players, has good quality, but also they're committed to streaming all this? Because a lot of players, right, they don't agree that you should stream all your scrims, right? So even in-house here, right, Nick on his other show, he's not a fan of streaming scrims, right? And he's a coach for Halo, right? So you need that roster. But the roster we put together just ended up to be this perfect form of chaos and greatness, right? So you have Boss in the top lane, right? Cadril himself is, as the coach / owner, he's really comedic. Reckless has been a long-time league player. I mean, he made waves in Europe, left to go. He was in SKT1, technically has a ring, right? So brought it back. And then Nemesis, right, in the mid lane, right? These are kind of your main core stars of personality for the stream. And then, of course, top lane with Bossy Boy, right? Boss is just like, he's a whole different dynamic to top lane, and a lot of hype around him. Like, people are calling him like the Messi of top lane, right? Because he just has a different take on the game. He often feeds, right? Somehow he goes like 1-8, 1-9, right? And he's still even or ahead of his laner. It doesn't make any sense, right? But he pulls it off. And that's his style. So he actually got banned from League for a while because of feeding. So Los Ratones is really making waves, and in my opinion, bringing a lot of spotlight back to League content. As far as the competitive scene goes, drawing interest there.
Yeah, Eli, I'm going to come right to you really quickly on this one. But one thing I will say is, like, it sounds like the Savannah Bananas of the baseball world, if you guys have heard this, where it's like, you're not just a competitive league team, you're other things, right? Because ultimately viewers drive everything. And so the more views you can get, the more things you can do. And so they've kind of mastered the business side of this thing, but it becomes this question of how competitive can they really be on the back end of it. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is a really cool team to me. I'm a huge Baus fan. I think that Baus, like, you could argue he's the most influential player in the game over the last couple of years, because they have literally had to make multiple patches to counter his strategies. Like, because like you said, you could be 1-8 and he's still ahead, and it's like, okay, he's taking advantage of the game somehow, right? And he fully understood the bounty system and how he could make himself a worthless bounty and then just be a tank that just runs at them, and they have to like deal with him while his teammates come in and kill them for massive bounties, because now they're worth a lot because they've killed Baus so many times. Like, he really thought through the math behind it to the point that people are making documentaries about how this guy inted his way to rank 1 on the leaderboard. And it's like, I don't know, that's such a cool story to me. And now this team forming kind of around him and Cadril and Reckless and Nemesis, it's like, these guys have been legends in the game to the point that they've built this massive following. And now there's all these people that probably stopped caring about League for a long time, but then they're like, wait a second, Reckless is playing again? And then now they start to watch, and there's this huge audience just for Los Ratones that are watching every single thing they scrim. I mean, yesterday, this match against EWI, not even that big of a match in the grand scheme of things, but there was probably a total of 500,000 people watching it, because these personalities are just massive, and that can only be a good thing for League of Legends. So
you say that, but ultimately it's like, how competitive can these guys be, Kepley?
Right.
Like, can they actually win something that matters?
I think they can. Boss is on a journey, right? So it's a big journey to go from being a challenger league player up to a competitive one. So I think that if today they stepped up and they went against like Carmine Corp, right? I don't think it's a good match, right? I think they kind of get stomped on, but the players are fundamentally good and they're getting there, right? They're getting better at their drafts. The patch, honestly, like the ending of lane swapping really hurt Boss, right? Because that's something he's very good at. So you see all these dynamics. I think that they will be in the LEC, and I think that today they're easily a top 5 team in the LEC. But they're not going to be the best. They're not going to win LEC in their current state. They still have some ways to go there.
Yeah, it's interesting to see as this unfolds, but we'll be watching it. Obviously, you'll be watching it at home too, because it sounds like these are a fun group to be able to watch play. So as those matches unfold, we'll be able to check them out. But Eli, any closing thoughts on the team?
Yeah, man. I really love watching Kadrill because he's just losing his mind because he's the brains behind this team, right? And like every time Baus is dying, he's like, I just told you not to int, Baus. I told you not to die, Baus. It's like, why are you taking this fight, Baus? And it's just like, out of the dynamic is just hilarious. It's like coming from a genuine place. Like he's not playing it up. Like he's actually so invested in their success, and they have like a really cool team dynamic. And like you said, this is one of the only places you get to see the behind the scenes of like, what's the draft sound like in the comms? Because the draft is always really interesting when I watch the tournaments. I'm like, how are they coming up with these decisions? But now you can hear the whole conversation, and it kind of like helps you learn a bit more about their thought process.
Yeah, you're learning more in depth about League, how it works from that level, right? Which is super fascinating for me because I've always been a fan of it, and I've always been like, man, I wish I could just like sit behind the scenes with one of these teams, and now I am. I'm riding shotgun with them. So I hope that keeps growing, man. I hope more teams adopt it. And the pressure of Los Ratones, now Europe was, I think, the only region that blocked streaming scrims. Now they've changed their whole policy around. So now those LEC teams can stream their scrims with them. So
there you go. Will be interesting to see. We'll be following it. Let us know what other games you want us to talk about, what things you want us to talk about on the show. Go down below, give us a like, give us a subscribe, so that we can continue to do the show, so that we continue to queue up with you, the audience members. But any closing thoughts from you, Davis? Just want to throw it over for the last one before we go.
Go Royal Ravens in this CDL event coming up.
Yeah, the CDL, we're going to be watching it in the office today, but there's a couple good matches today.
Yeah, very good.
And we've all put some stakes on some of them, so we'll see how it unfolds. But thanks for watching us here. Queued up. It's been another great episode. We'll see you guys in the next one.